The rain poured mercilessly that night, pounding on the uneven tar road like drums of fate. Amelia staggered along the roadside, clutching her swollen belly, her clothes drenched and sticking to her fragile frame. Her husband, Richard, had abandoned her months ago, chasing wealth, status, and the glamorous life he thought she could never give him. She had begged him to stay, pleaded for their unborn children's sake, but he had turned his back coldly, leaving her to fend for herself. Now, the contractions tore through her like lightning, and she collapsed by the roadside, her screams drowned by thunder. Passers-by avoided her, thinking she was a madwoman or a poor beggar. With trembling hands, she pushed, tears mixing with raindrops as her strength waned. Two frail cries pierced the night, twin boys, her miracles born in mud and rain. Exhausted, Amelia held them close, shielding them with her shawl, whispering prayers through chattering teeth. Just then, headlights approached. A sleek black car sped through, and with a violent splash, mud covered her face, her newborns, and her tattered dress. She squinted through the rain and saw the driver's face, Richard, her billionaire husband, the man who had once sworn to love her forever. Their eyes met for a fleeting second before he accelerated, leaving her in filth with the twins wailing. Amelia's heart shattered anew, realizing that even in her darkest moment, he could still wound her with his cold indifference. Before life unraveled, Amelia had once been Richard's treasure. They met when he was just a struggling entrepreneur with nothing but dreams, and she had stood by him, encouraging him through failures, investing her savings, and even going hungry so he could chase his ambitions. Their love had been simple but pure, filled with laughter in a tiny apartment, late-night plans scribbled on napkins, and whispered promises of forever. But everything changed when wealth finally came. The man who once swore she was his queen became distant, ashamed of her simple ways, embarrassed by her lack of sophistication compared to the glamorous women in his new circle. At first, Amelia fought for their marriage, dressing differently, learning his world, even enduring humiliation at elite gatherings where she was mocked for her humble roots. But Richard had already drifted. When she became pregnant, she thought the news would reignite their bond, but instead, he accused her of trying to trap him, of being a burden. That night, he walked out, leaving her broken. Now, lying in the mud with her twins clutched to her chest, Amelia remembered the man she once loved and the promises he broke. She realized then that she was alone, and she would have to be both mother and father, protector and provider. She kissed her babies' foreheads, vowing through her tears that she would never let them feel the sting of abandonment that she had felt. As the rain eased, a faint light appeared in the distance. A young woman on a motorcycle slowed down when she saw Amelia huddled by the road with two crying babies. "My God, are you okay?" she exclaimed, pulling off her raincoat and rushing to cover the shivering infants. Amelia was too weak to speak, her lips trembling as she tried to explain. The woman, whose name was Grace, quickly realized what had happened. Without hesitation, she helped Amelia to her feet, carried the newborns carefully, and guided them to her small house nearby. Grace was poor, working odd jobs to survive, but she treated Amelia like a sister. She boiled water, wrapped the twins in dry cloth, and prepared herbs to ease Amelia's pain. Through the night, Grace nursed them all, never once asking who Amelia was or why she was abandoned on the roadside. For the first time in months, Amelia felt the warmth of kindness. She broke down and told Grace everything: her marriage, Richard's betrayal, the roadside birth, and how he had splashed mud on her as though she were nothing. Grace listened with tears in her eyes, then said firmly, "Forget him. A man who can abandon his wife and children is no man at all. These babies are your new strength, Amelia. You must rise for them." Those words planted a seed in Amelia's heart, a seed of resilience. She knew her journey would be difficult, but she wasn't powerless. She had her twins, and now she had an ally. Though Richard had sped away that night, the image of Amelia and the newborns haunted him. He had recognized her despite the mud and rain, the woman he once loved, the wife he had abandoned. For a moment, guilt gnawed at him, but pride silenced his conscience. He told himself she was better off without him, that she was a reminder of the past he wanted to bury. Yet, in the quiet of his mansion, her face would appear in his mind. He remembered her sacrifices, her laughter, her unwavering belief in him. He remembered how she had held his hand when investors rejected him, how she sold her jewelry to pay his debts. But those memories clashed with his new world, the glittering parties, the glamorous women who draped themselves over him, the respect he commanded as a billionaire. Still, late at night, when the lights dimmed and the noise faded, he felt an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. He drank heavily, trying to drown the haunting image of Amelia in the rain with his children. He told himself he didn't care, but deep down, a war raged within him. Somewhere, beneath layers of arrogance and pride, the man who once loved Amelia still lived. And fate, he did not know, was already weaving a path that would force him to face the consequences of his betrayal. Amelia's recovery was slow, but with Grace's help, she gained strength. She found work washing clothes and cleaning homes, carrying her twins strapped to her back as she labored. Every coin she earned went into a small jar she called the Future Fund for her children. She endured whispers and mockery from neighbors who pitied her, but she ignored them. At night, when the twins cried, she sang lullabies, her voice cracking but full of love. Grace often reminded her, "Every struggle is building your strength." Amelia began to believe it. She took sewing lessons, learned to make simple dresses, and started selling them at the market. Slowly, she became known for her determination and resilience. Though she had little, she carried herself with dignity, and her children thrived under her care. She never once cursed Richard, but she did not forget. Each day, she reminded herself that her children deserved better than the rejection she endured. She vowed they would grow up knowing love, not shame. What Amelia did not know was that destiny had a way of turning tables, and the very man who had splashed mud on her life would one day bow his head before her strength. The twins, Ethan and Evan, grew quickly, filling Amelia's days with both exhaustion and joy. They were mischievous, always curious, and their laughter lit up even the darkest moments. Amelia worked tirelessly, never letting them feel the weight of her struggles. She taught them kindness, humility, and resilience. By the time they turned 5, they were bright and sharp, adored by everyone in the neighborhood. Grace, now like an aunt to them, often said, "These boys will grow into great men. You'll see." Amelia smiled but carried a silent fear. What if Richard returned one day to claim them? She shook off the thought, focusing instead on building her small business. Her sewing had grown into a thriving trade, and she began employing other women, giving them opportunities just as Grace had once given her. Though she still carried scars of the past, Amelia had transformed pain into purpose. And unknowingly, her success was starting to draw attention, even from the elite circles Richard belonged to. It happened on a sunny afternoon when Amelia was invited to showcase her designs at a charity event. Nervous but determined, she arrived with Grace and her twins by her side. The event was filled with the city's wealthy elite, and Amelia felt out of place, but her designs spoke for themselves. Guests marveled at her creativity, her unique blend of elegance and simplicity. Suddenly, the room fell silent as Richard entered with his new fiancée, a glamorous socialite. Amelia froze, her heart pounding. Richard's eyes met hers, and shock rippled through him. She was no longer the broken woman by the roadside. She was radiant, confident, and commanding respect. His gaze dropped to the twins clinging to her dress, and realization struck him like lightning. They were his sons. Shame, guilt, and longing surged within him, but pride locked his tongue. His fiancée, noticing his distraction, whispered sharply, but Richard couldn't look away. The woman he had discarded had risen, and the children he had abandoned were living proof of his betrayal. Later that evening, Richard approached Amelia privately. His voice trembled as he said, "Amelia, those boys, they're mine, aren't they?" She looked at him with steady eyes and replied, "They're mine. Mine to protect, mine to raise." You lost the right to call them yours the night you drove away. Richard staggered, his pride crumbling under her words. He tried to justify himself, claiming he was young, blinded by ambition, unprepared for fatherhood. But Amelia silenced him with a cold truth. You weren't unprepared. You were selfish. And while you partied in mansions, I gave birth on the roadside. Do you remember? You splashed mud on me that night. Richard's face paled, the memory crashing back in unbearable clarity. He fell silent, ashamed, but Amelia walked away, her twins holding her hands. For the first time, Richard realized that money and power could not erase his sins. He had lost not just his wife, but the chance to be part of his children's first steps, first words, first smiles. And he feared it was too late to make amends. Richard began seeking Amelia out, showing up at her shop, sending gifts for the twins, trying to win her forgiveness. But Amelia was unmoved. She didn't want his wealth or apologies. She wanted him to understand that fatherhood wasn't a role he could buy, it was one he had abandoned. The twins, innocent and curious, warmed up to him quickly, unaware of the history between their parents. This pained Amelia, but she didn't stop them from knowing their father. Still, she kept her distance. Richard, humbled by her rejection, began changing. He cut ties with shallow friends, broke off his engagement with his fiancée, who only loved his wealth, and started spending time with his sons genuinely. Slowly, Amelia saw glimpses of the man she once loved, the man who had dreams, humility, and warmth. But forgiveness was not easy. Her scars ran deep, and she struggled with trust. Grace reminded her, forgiveness doesn't erase the past, Amelia, but sometimes it allows the future to heal. Years passed, and Richard proved himself. He didn't just shower the twins with luxury. He showed up for school plays, helped with homework, and tucked them in when Amelia allowed. His persistence softened Amelia's heart, though she never let him forget his past. One evening, as they sat together watching the twins sleep, Richard whispered, I don't deserve you, Amelia. But if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Tears welled in her eyes. She thought of the roadside where it all began, of the mud, the rain, the betrayal. But she also thought of how far she had come, how she had risen despite it all. Finally, she said, You will never erase what happened, Richard. But if you're truly changed, then prove it every day for them, not for me. In that moment, forgiveness began, not as a gift to Richard, but as Amelia's final act of strength. She had turned her pain into power, her betrayal into resilience. And though their love story would never be the same, it had been rewritten, not with mud and abandonment, but with redemption and the strength of a woman who refused to be broken.